from Russia were running to Israel out of courage. Because if this is just to be another democracy that happens to be in the Middle East, well, Canada is a very nice democracy. Why don't I move there? If this is just to be another Hebrew-speaking Portugal, why stay here? Is it worth fighting for? Is it worth dying for? So every Israeli now is going through a certain soul-searching. And they have to ask themselves, why am I here? In fact, almost 500,000 Israelis since 1948 have moved out of Israel to Germany, to Europe, to LA, to Atlanta, to New York. And at the same time, there were Israelis just like me that said, Scud rockets are hitting Israel. I'm getting on the next plane to do whatever I can to help fulfill our biblical destiny. My father was 21 when he finished his military service. Because in Israel, everyone goes to the army. Do you all know that? Mm-hmm. Everyone. Because when you have 23 Arab countries and over 1 billion Muslims that want to throw you into the sea, everyone needs to know how to use a gun. That's the reason. So 21, my father wanted to become a doctor. But his grades weren't up to par. There was only one medical school at the time in the early 1960s. And he was too busy playing soccer in high school. He just didn't have the grades. So he got on the last ferry to leave Israel to America. Now a ferry was like, it's a while ago. He arrived in New York with $500 in his pocket, about 1,000 words of English, and he bought one book, The Webster's Guide to College Campuses in America. Because he didn't have the internet then, he couldn't research it from Israel. So he got to New York on the ferry and bought a book. Now, I went to law school here in Israel, and before I chose my law school, I had a lot of criteria. I wanted to know who the professors were, I wanted to know what the hours were, I wanted to know how many girls studied there. I had a lot of criteria to make sure that I went to the school that I'd have a good time, get a good education. My father opened up the Webster's Guide, and he had one criteria. He looked for the cheapest college in America. And he found the cheapest college in America was, in fact, in a little town outside Alexandria, Louisiana, a Baptist Bible college. So, as you can imagine, in the early 1960s, a Jew from Israel to take a ferry to America to end Alexandria, Louisiana today is like a really small town. Then, it was a really small town. And here comes this Jew from Israel enrolled in a Baptist Bible college. And, amazingly, the Christians in this school loved my father. They said, a Jew from the Holy Land is going to learn at our institution? What a blessing. And they helped my father, and they guided my father, and they tutored my father. And see, without those Christians even knowing what they were doing, a generation later, there's now an Orthodox Jew in Israel that has a real heart for the Christian. Because when my dad needed it most, it was Christians in America that first took care of it. Random acts of kindness that we have no idea how it will affect have now literally shifted entire generations in their perspectives. So my father, I told you, he didn't know English. He knew a little bit of English. And he is a hard worker. He's still, to this day, a psychiatrist here in Israel. He's still a hard worker. He works every night, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then takes long weekends. He still is totally dedicated and just full of character and hard work. He still has his textbooks. Over every other English word is a Hebrew word written in pen. Meaning, he sat with a dictionary, not Google, and he opened up textbooks and translated entire textbooks just to understand what was written, never mind studying for the test, just to understand. So he was doing 18, 19-hour days. I mean, it's not easy to get into medical school in America. You need to get really good grades. And so he was studying around the clock. One Saturday night, fateful Saturday night, his friends come to his dormitory and say, listen, you know, you're studying all the time. Why don't you come out to the game with us tonight? And my father said, the game? I love playing games. What game are we going to play? And they said, no. The college team has a football game tonight. My dad said, football? I love football. I've been playing football my whole life. Because in Hebrew, football is soccer. It's kind of regular, right? So my father arrives to the stadium expecting to see a soccer game. All of a sudden, he sees these big husky Americans with paddings and helmets jumping all over each other. I'm like, what did I be an American do to soccer? Like, didn't understand it. He's paying close attention to the game, and at one point in the game, he sees, this is how he explains it, they kick this little egg-shaped ball through this big H, which we would call a field goal. And the crowd went wild. It was a Baptist Bible college, so they weren't that great, so they got 3 points on the board, they were very excited. And so my father sort of looks at them and says, well, you know, guys, I can do that. And I said, excuse me? He says, well, yeah, I've been playing soccer my whole life in Israel. I can really kick that little egg through that big H. And he said, well, what would a Jew from Israel know anything about American football? I said, well, listen, I don't know anything about American football, but I can kick that egg through that big H. There's not even a goalie. You know, like someone that's trying to stop you. You can just kick it. You can kick it as high as you want. You can kick it as far as you want. Like, I don't know, it's not a big deal. They said, well, that's interesting. Well, let's see if you can really do this. So the very next Sunday, they went out to the football field and put the ball on the 20-yard line. And if you look at old football clips from the early 1960s, you'll see that kickers used to wear funny-looking shoes. They would shave off their toes, run at the ball straight on, and kick it like that, just like straight on. So my father put the ball down and stood at it at an angle, like they do today. And he came and he swung at it like a soccer ball. And it went right through. Well, they were shocked. They'd never seen anyone kick a football like that before. It went right through, and my dad said, guys, there's not even a goalie here. I don't understand this game. And I said, well, maybe that was lucky. They put the ball on the 25-yard line. It went right through. The 30-yard line, the 40-yard line. At the 45-yard line, when my dad didn't miss, this is his favorite part of the story, a hush came over the field. We have a secret weapon from Israel. Very soon, my father became the star of the football team because they weren't ever good enough to get it really in the end zone, but now they didn't have to make it halfway down the field. And my dad did amazing stories on Yom Kippur. It was the playoffs, but he was fasting, and the sheriff's department was waiting outside the synagogue to pick him up and take him to the game. The stories that my dad has. We all say, until this day, thank God for American football. Because with American football, my father got a full-paid scholarship to Oklahoma University Medical School. Wow. He was drafted to the Chicago Bears. Oh. It's true. He said, no thank you, I want to be a doctor. I just use this to pay the bills to get through school. But it was him and another Hungarian player at the same time that invented or introduced European soccer-style kicking to American football. So the Hungarian guy became very famous because he went pro, and now you'll know my dad was also among him. But the stories that the Jewish people have, and somehow then my father said, well, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to get my license, move back to the Holy Land and heal the sick. Well, then he got an internship in Atlanta, and then he got promoted, and then he got a nicer car, then he bought a bigger house, and then the cars got a little bit nicer, and the houses got a little bit nicer, and one year led to another year, led to another year. 20 years we were in Atlanta, 20 years, until Saddam Hussein woke us up from our slumber. And so, why do I tell you this story? So many people have a vision of how they see the redemption unfold. And what we need to realize and internalize is that the redemption is unfolding right now. The greatest miracles are happening, but they're miracles that we're taking part in. They're miracles that we have a chance to live through, not just to watch, but to be a part of prophecy, to be a part of God's will. Now, everyone knows about the 6-day war. I'm going to tell you a story about my co-host, Ari Abramovitz. Ari, probably one of the funniest people that I know. He's so tall, so big, great guy. I'm his commander in the Israeli army. He's my best friend in real life. We host the radio show together, we host our television show together, all the time together, but once a year, reserve duty, I have to rest. His first day in the Israeli army, he's from Texas, and he moved to Israel, and his Hebrew wasn't perfect. His first day in the Israeli army, now to understand the first day in basic training in an infantry unit, what the army is doing is taking 18-year-old high school boys and converting them into soldiers. So the discipline is from another planet. The distance between the officer and the soldier is, you don't see their eyes for the first few weeks. There's so much distance between us. His first day in the Israeli army, there's what's called a Mizdar Machlaka, where you stand in a straight line and you're introduced to your officers for the first time. Ari, in his first day in the IDF, comes late to his first Mizdar Machlaka. It wasn't his fault, because he was what's called a lone soldier. It doesn't have family here, no parents here, so the army has to deal with who's going to do this guy's laundry. Where is he going to go for the Sabbath? Who is taking care of this guy? So the army has a whole system. So he was meeting with an army secretary, figuring out what to do with him, but either way, he came late to his first meeting with his officers. Everyone is standing at attention. Everyone is petrified. They don't know what to expect. And in comes this 6'3" big guy running. Seeing that he's late, standing, everyone is nervous. What's going to happen? Who's going to be what? The officers are clearly annoyed that he's late. And then he says, in his own Hebrew, Slicha she'ani mechoar. Excuse me for being mechoar. In Hebrew, meuchar is late. Mechoar is ugly. Excuse me, sir, I'm sorry for being so ugly. It's a tough break, I don't know. Sorry, I have no idea what to say. But of course, as you did, all the soldiers, of course, broke out laughing. The commanders broke out laughing. And to make your commanders laugh the first day of the IDF is just about the worst thing you can do. So the rest of the night, they spent running up and down mountains, trying to make a certain amount of time to restore order to basic training. But why am I telling you this story? What's happening in Israel today is literally a miracle. We just don't see it because either we've become used to it, or we just don't have the Messiah eyes to see it. But 1948 is a far greater miracle than the Six-Day War, and I'll tell you why. 1948, a band of Holocaust survivors somehow comes to Israel. And also these refugees from Arab countries come. And this little group of unorganized Jews are here in the land. And military, trained, professional armies at the same time attack. Now, as a platoon sergeant, when we go into Gaza, it's relatively complicated, especially urban warfare, because there's heights, and there's behind, and there's windows, but giving commands like, Ari, you cover the window, you go to the left, you cover the back. In 1948, imagine what that platoon sergeant had to do. He would give out an order and say, charge. The guy from Russia would say, excuse me, I speak Russian. What did he say? The guy from Poland says, I speak Polish. What do you say? The guy from France is saying, what is everyone here saying? The guy from Yemen is saying, I only speak Arabic. And we won that war? How? That's impossible. That is an impossibility. And yet, it's exactly what happened because a destined time is chosen for the nation of Israel to return to its homeland. But it's all happening in such a natural way. So what I'd like to do tonight, with your permission, well first, let's learn a little bit from the Torah portion of the week. This is the section where God first appears to Abraham. Now, what we believe, the power of these scriptures, is that it's speaking to the nation as a whole. It's also speaking to every single person individually in their lives. And it's also speaking to the entire world as a whole. So these scriptures, I believe, that our meeting here in Jerusalem is not a coincidence. Perhaps these scriptures here are literally speaking to you in your lives right now. But we open up to Genesis chapter 12. Right before Genesis chapter 12, at the end of chapter 11, it says that Terach, Abraham's father, took Abraham and Lot, his grandson, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, the wife of Abraham's son, and they departed with them from Ur-Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. So they picked up on their way to the land of Israel, to the land of Canaan. They arrived at Haran, and they settled there. So they were in Ur-Kasdim. They wanted on their own to go to the land of Israel, They started going and they stopped on their way and settled in a place called Haran. This week's Torah portion opens up saying, God said to Abraham, go for yourself from your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. The first